All right, here we go. We have Bobby Luisi, former made man of the Philadelphia crime family. Welcome to VladTV.
Thank you for having me on, Vlad.
Well, you have a very interesting story, and I want to start in the beginning.
Okay.
So you actually grew up in Boston.
I grew up in Boston in the North End in Little Italy.
Okay, and what was that like?
Well, it was something. I mean, that was headquarters for organized crime at that time. And I grew up with all made guys, bosses, capos, you know. My father was involved with them since he was a teenager, you know, so I grew up around all these people, the Patriarca family.
Okay, so the Patriarca family, and it's got a few different names. It's also called the New England Mafia, the Boston Mafia, the Providence Mafia, and also the Office.
Yeah. But now
Okay.
we say Patriarca crime family.
Okay, why was it called the Office?
I don't know, that might have been Jerry and Julo's place on Prince Street. Jerry and Julo was the boss of Boston. Raymond Patriarca's underboss. And he ran all the Boston faction of the Patriarca family.
Okay, and the Patriarca family really has a very interesting history because they're not officially connected to the New York crime families, right?
Well, they're all connected. Raymond Patriarca was connected with the New York families. And in Springfield, Massachusetts was the Genovese family.
Aha.
They had a crew down there. Yeah.
Okay, because there was a national commission that sort of overlooked all this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Raymond Patriarca Sr. was part of that.
Aha. Okay. So in 1983, Patriarca was actually charged with the murder of Raymond Curcio?
That may be the name. I don't recall. Yeah.
Okay. And also he was arrested for the murder of Robert Candos, who I guess he thought was an informant.
Okay.
This happened in 83, and then in 84, he died of a heart attack.
He did, yes.
At 76 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, there became sort of a power struggle.
Yeah, there was a problem. After that, when he passed away, you know, Jerry and Julo, who was the boss up there, Larry Bione, a few of these guys were looking for that seat. Jerry and Julo was his underboss, and Raymond left it to his son, to Raymond Jr., which he was nothing like the father, you know, not well respected in that manner. And it caused a problem down there. There was a rift. So in the mid-'80s to '90, there were some murders down there, power struggles. And then it continued into the '90s.
Okay, so you yourself, I guess you were around 11 years old when you started getting involved?
When I was 11 years old, I worked for the Angelos. It was Rome vending, and it's a good story. I used to go after school and on Saturdays, and I used to roll the dime machines for them. Ronnie Romanowski, it was Rome vending, that he was the front guy for them, you know, partner with them. And I started working for them when I was 11, yeah.
Okay, so 11 years old, what year is this? Just so I could kind of...
Well, I was born in 61. 72?
Okay, so
yeah.
This was 72, so this is pretty early still.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, and your father is involved in the Patriarcas.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And what was his role exactly with them?
Well, my father was a bad guy. He was a tough guy. You know, he was always into the strip joints, after-hour clubs. You know, he was muscle and whatever else he had to be for them, you know. And my father was a good guy, very loyal to them. Grew up with all the, you know, made guys in his era. And, you know, he was with them, like I said, probably his early 20s. Teens to early 20s.
Okay, so your dad is really kind of really deeply ingrained. He was a made man for the Patriarcas?
No, he was for Poles twice, but he was never made.
Aha. Okay. Now, what was your dad doing exactly? Was he muscle? Was he a hitman? Was he a drug guy? Or do you not really know?
I'll say an all-around guy.
All-around guy.
He was an all-around guy. He did everything. Yeah.
Okay. So 11 years old, you start getting mixed up in it.
Yeah.
And what starts to happen as you get into your teens?
In my teens, I started hanging around with these guys. There was a few names that, you know, Larry Bione was a capo there. He was very powerful in the family. And his crew was Johnny Cincotti, Rafi Chong. And we used to go down to the Bell Monopoly Pizza on Hanover Street. That was their headquarters. We started hanging around them with them, So we'd be young kids with, $150 shoes on, dressed up every day. Not with suits on, but, nice, And we started hanging around with them. But also at that time, my family also was in the construction business. And I wanted to be a carpenter at that time. I really didn't want to be a gangster, So I started going more to that with my uncles. And I think it was 20 years old, I got my first builder's license. And I had my own construction company at 21, and I was following that up until 30 years old. I was staying away from all of that, But I was still around them all the time. My father was still with them. So, they were everyday faces in the neighborhood, these wise guys. You couldn't miss them,
Well, at one point, you actually started to expand into other things like loan sharking, extortion, and drug dealing.
What happened, the late 80s, the market crashed down in Cape Cod in my area. And, the area was overbuilt. And at that time, I think I had 3 houses on Martha's Vineyard. I had a condo back in Boston, and I lost everything. So I came home in 90 with nothing, just my 2 kids and a minivan. So the best thing I could do is I put a gun on my back and I went on the street. The Luisi name was already in the neighborhood, my father and my family. It was pretty easy for me to slide in there. Then I started with the drugs, card clubs, bookmaking, loan sharking, and obviously the drugs. That was the big money maker for me.
Okay, so the drugs was your main thing. Was it mostly cocaine?
Cocaine.
At the height of that drug business, how much were you buying at a time? How many kilos?
Well, I had them dropped off at different places, like 4 or 5 at a time. The Colombians would bring to me. I would never, try to get an order of 10, 20, 30, 40 at a time. I was responsible for it, so I didn't want to, just in case. So there was a lot of visits to the safe houses that I had.
So you were working with the Colombians at the time?
Yeah.
Was it Escobar or was it someone else?
I don't know what else it was, I got to be honest with you. I got him through a contact, a friend, and he was a good guy. We called him the Mole, and there was another guy, Alex. There were several different guys at the time, But I never got into deep conversations with them, and I just assumed they were with that outfit, bringing all this stuff up to Boston,
Well, right, I guess doing 4 or 5 kilos, Escobar is not really going to have a conversation with you.
No, I'm not. I wasn't at that. No, listen. I wasn't at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I made millions of dollars with it, but, I'm not going to lie to you. Like I said, 4 or 5 at a time, a few times a week, 3 times a week, And then I would take them and recon it. And that's where I made all my money with it.
What does that mean exactly?
I used to break it down.
Okay.
Make new keys out of it and push the keys.
Oh, so you would cut it with whatever else?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you talk about the cocaine game, it's usually very violent. It's usually, a lot of backstabbing. There's dirty cops. There's packages disappearing. There's, stash houses getting raided and so forth. How much of that did you have to go through yourself?
Tell you not much. We were very careful. I was never robbed. I didn't have that problem. I mean, there were struggles with other guys that were dealing drugs in different crews. I'll admit that, But we took care of all of that, and we just kept going with it, I mean, there's different areas. I never set myself up. I could have got bigger with the drugs, but I was happy where I was. I made a few million right away, and the money kept coming in, so I wasn't greedy with it. I didn't want to expand anymore. I was happy with my operation. It was pretty safe. So, the way I was running everything.
Well, you had said at one point there was a turf war over the drugs, and there ended up being a number of murders over that.
But there was a turf war over the different factions of the family. See what happened, and Frankie Salemi became the boss in the early 90s, and they really didn't want him there. The Boston faction didn't want him there. Luckily for him, Joe Russo, Vinny Ferraro, all these guys got picked up and were in prison. And so Frankie just slid in there with his faction, and I was part of his faction for a little while. You know, and the old faction and the guys with them, you know, fought against us. You know, eventually, most of them all got picked up or murdered. I lost some people too, and I was like the last guy standing there for a little while.
Well, in 1990, $500 million worth of art got stolen.
Yeah.
It was rumored the U.S. something to do with that.
Well, I'll tell you this story. It's rumored that Bobby Guarente did that art heist with a few other people. Were involved in it, and Bobby we hooked up together about 93. So it was after the fact that I met Bobby, after they did this robbery. And Bobby Gentile, who they also blame for this, is a main guy in my crew. And Bobby, till this day, claims he had nothing to do with it. But like I said, these guys, they were street guys all their lives, you know. So when Bobby, we were in one of my safe houses, I remember up in Walton, we're sitting on the couch, and Miles Corner comes on TV. They start talking about the artwork. So he turns around to me and says, listen, I know where it is. It's buried under a slab in Florida. He said, can we move it? You know, because at that time we were going to New York, Philadelphia. But I never really moved on. I didn't know, you know, where to move it, who to go to. So I told him no. I said, I got no place to move it. And I dropped the conversation. And I wish I never did, because I could have got more information out of him. You know, Bobby Guarente passed away. When I was getting out of prison in 2013, the FBI came to me over this artwork. And the only reason why I talked about it, because Bobby did pass away, or I would have never got involved with it, you know. But from that point on, I don't know how many documentaries I've been in over that. Even in Japan, they came and did a documentary with me, you know. So I got a lot of attention from that. For the little that I knew, they said was still a lot, so that was good, you know.
Well, I mean, the type of art that got stolen was like multiple Rembrandts. There was this one painting called The Concert by Johannes Vermeer, which is the most valuable unrecovered painting in the world.
I know.
There was a $10 million bounty that the museum actually gave for the return of this painting, which was the largest bounty ever offered by a private institution.
Yeah. And when they came to me, there was a $5 million reward at the time from the feds. And believe me, I wish I knew. You know, I wish I knew where this stuff was. But it's funny with that because, like I said, all the attention we got, and the biggest art heist in the world was pulled off by Boston gangsters. I don't think anybody realizes that. On my own podcast, I just did a show with Steve Kirkjian, and he wrote a book on that, Master Thieves. And I guess we did that a few months ago, we did that show. And we go over all of that, all the characters in there, and it was a pretty good show, you know.
So they never found the artwork?
Never found it, no.
Well, I mean, realistically, when you steal artwork that is so distinctive and so high profile, who would you even sell that to?
Well, my theory with this is what I believe happened. I believe that somebody wanted a certain piece of art or maybe a few pieces in there, and they went to some people to see if they could get in there and get that artwork. And I believe while they were in there, they helped themselves to whatever they could, because I believe it was 13 pieces altogether, you know? I believe some artwork went somewhere to a certain individual. Of course, it's a theory, I can't prove that. But to know Bobby and these guys going in there, there had to be something for them. I mean, these guys been doing this their whole life. They're just not gonna walk in and grab something without a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, crazy story.
It is. And then now, there's a theory that I had George Anastasia and David Strauss-Walzer on my show recently, and they were talking about the Philly connection with the yacht. And David's convinced that the artwork went through Philly when I was away. I got picked up in June of '99, me and Joey Merlino and some of our guys, you know, and I guess after that, somewhere in 2000, they're claiming the artwork went through Philadelphia. You know? So who knows?
Okay. Okay. So here you are, you're involved with the Patriarca family, and there's this whole internal power struggle that's happening, and people are getting shot. People are getting killed on both sides.
Yeah.
And then November 6th, 1995 comes around. At the 99 restaurant in Charleston. Talk about what happened there.
Well, Damian Clemente was a neighborhood kid. Grew up in the North End. My father grew up with his father, Cleo. And, Damian was moving around in the neighborhood. My father kept going after him. And, Cleo got pissed off over that. So there was a little, the night before the shooting, there was an altercation in a coffee shop in the North End where Vinny and Damian and another fella beat up one of my father's guys, And then right after that, they came to me, and I talked to my father after that, and my cousin Ricky Sarro, and we were just going to try to straighten it out. So they went to the 99 restaurant to stay out of the North End. I told them to stay out of the North End, Vinny and Damian. But they went to the restaurant. Who walks in the restaurant? My father, my brother Roman, Ricky and Anthony Sarro, Sonny Bishi all walk in the restaurant. And the kids panicked, and Damian called his father. And his father came down with a gun. There were words went back and forth, and they started shooting. My family didn't have guns on them at that time, so they were just basically slaughtered there.
Well, your father got killed.
My father, my brother Roman,
your cousin,
Anthony Sarro, my other cousin Ricky got
another
shot.
Friend of the family.
Sonny Bish,
So you yourself were not there?
No, I wasn't there. They called me to go to lunch. Vinny and Damian called me to go to lunch that day, but I had a meeting with somebody, so I didn't end up going.
Well, when you heard the news, how did you react?
Well, it was, a little shocked. A little shocked.
A little shocked.
A little
that
shocked.
Your father, brother, and cousin just got killed.
A little shocked.
A little shocked.
A little shocked. Yeah. I was surprised because one of my guys were there earlier to meet them to pick up some of my money. So they went down to meet them at the 99, and Al called me at the time and said I just met them, and then he called me back 20 minutes later, said they were all dead. Someone had called him, so.
Well, the guy who did it, it was just one gunman?
Well, the father Cleo shot, and Damian's shot his gun, and that's the one that killed my father. Damian's bullet.
Okay. And Anthony Clemente was the one who did all the shooting?
Yeah.
Well, what happened to Anthony afterwards?
To Cleo? They both got life in prison. Damian and Cleo. Yeah.
Did that bring some level of closure to you, or did you feel like you wanted your own revenge?
Well, it's hard for me to talk about that either way, if you could understand that. I mean, that was my family, and that was devastating to the Luisi family, obviously, but, it was hard. Nobody wants to see their father and their brother gone and their cousins, No matter what happened between me and my father on the street, he was still my father, But, at that time, a lot of things going on, a lot of guys getting killed. We were doing a lot of things, and, your heart hardens up there a little. You know what I mean? That's why.
Now, was your mother alive during that time?
My mother? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she still is,
How did your mother take that?
Well,
to lose her husband and her son?
No, my mother divorced my father when I was 2 years old.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. She's remarried my mother to my father, Santo. Yeah.
Well, but that was still her son?
No.
Oh, that wasn't her son. Okay.
No. My sister and I were from the original marriage. My father's been married several times, and there were children from different marriages.
Got it.
You got it?
I mean, when that happened, when your father and brother gets murdered, Was there a certain level of, I just need to get out of this? Like,
No,
this
God.
is, no?
A certain level of what?
Well, I'm just like, I just got to leave this life alone. Let me just walk away from all this because look how close it's hitting the home at this point.
No, not at all. Actually, as soon as they got killed, I started putting everything together. I go, whatever my father had and my cousins, I just put everything together back in whole into the family. I was out the next day. There's nothing you could do. That's the life we chose to be in, my friend. You know, my father was a gangster, my brother. They knew what they were doing. You know, it's not like they were civilians, got caught off guard or by accident. No. Life is life, my friend. If you want to be in this life, you got to be able to accept all of this. You know what I mean, Vlad?
Yeah.
Agabish. Yeah.
Well, by 1998, a few years later, you decided to join the Philly mob.
Well, what happened, as time progressed in Boston, I was a proposed guy in the Patriarca family. But everything was in disarray at that time. And I'm the type of guy who really don't like to take orders from people, so I wanted to try to go do my own thing. You know? So we went through New York and down to Philly, and I met Joey and the guys down there. And I ended up becoming a capo de Gene in their family.
Okay, so in the Patriarcas, you were never a made man, but when you went over to Philly, they made you a made man.
Yes, I was a proposed man in the Patriarca family, waiting to get made. But I had some falling out with some Patriarcas. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. Not at that time, anyway. And I was very strong in Boston at that time. With my crews, with my money, you know, and I guess I just wanted to go far on myself, and that's what I did. Joining Philadelphia, becoming a capo regime there, made me a boss in Boston. 300 miles away, you know, and I ran my crews the way I wanted to run my crews up there.
Okay. Now, originally you met Ralph Natal?
When I first went down, I went to Cherry Hill and I met Ralph. The first meeting. He was in prison with a friend of mine, Frank Rossi, and Frank introduced us. We sat down, we talked, and I went down there maybe twice. I met Ralph, and then after the second meeting, I met Georgie Borghese. And me and Georgie hit it off real well.
Okay, but ultimately you were made a captain under Joey Merlino.
Yes, I was. Yep.
Okay, that's Skinny Joey.
Skinny Joey, yeah.
Skinny Joey. And he became the boss of the Philly crime family in 99.
He was the boss of the Philly crime family before that. He put Ralph Natali there as his front guy. Joey always ran the family.
Okay, now Ralph Natali, did he end up becoming an informant?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Did you guys have any idea?
That he was going to be an informant? No, I
Or
didn't. No, they didn't have an idea he would do that. You know, but what happened with Ralph, he was involved in drug deals, and he got violated. They caught him on tape talking to Ronnie Previty about being the boss of Philadelphia, and he got violated on that. And while he was in that, he was getting re-indicted on drug charges. You know, that's why Ralph Natali really flipped. There was no other reason. He wants to blame Joey and the guys that he flipped. They had nothing to do with that. Ralph was dealing drugs with his son-in-law and his brother.
Okay, now, back in Boston, did you have any sort of contact with Whitey Bulger?
None at all.
Okay, but Whitey Bulger, his crew sort of had beef with the Patriarcas.
No, that's not how all that went down.
No?
No. Listen, Whitey was always around the Italians, okay? Whitey was out there doing his thing with Stevie Flemmi and that crew they had over there was a bad crew, and Whitey was a bad guy and his guys. I'm not taking nothing away from them, but they were always with the Italians. You gotta remember, the Moneranos were in that crew. Jimmy Monerano was a May guy. Frankie Salemi became a May guy. Those are all their friends. What they were doing, what Whitey was doing, he kept ratting on the Italians, and he set up the doghouse on Prince Street for the feds, and they went in there and wired it up, and that's how they got Jerry. So that's how Whitey was taking the Italians off the street, was by ratting on them. That was his whole game. You know, they blow Whitey up, and like I said, I'm not saying he wasn't a bad guy and had a bad crew. I'm not saying that. But they blow him up because he's a centerpiece with that Connolly, the FBI agent. You know, when he took off, he was most wanted. And that put Whitey on the map, you know. But as far as La Cosa Nostra, he had nothing to say and nothing to do.
Well, when you ultimately found out that he got killed by another prisoner a few years ago, what'd you think?
What did I think? I was surprised it happened because I was surprised they were able to get at him. You know, he's an older guy now. It was a bad way to go out. But, you know, you reap what you sow, my friend. And he did that to himself. So, you know, I don't know what to say about that.
Well, you're part of the Philly crime family.
Yeah.
And drugs is really your thing.
Drugs are no shocking. I made things. No.
So did that start to expand once you're with Philly?
No, I had that business before I went down to Philly. Nothing expanded when I went to Philly. I went to Philly, and I'll tell you, those guys were great guys. Joey took me in and Georgie and the crew down there to get straightened out. I already had my thing in Boston. I was already a boss up there. But I wanted, you know, I was in that life, and I wanted that button, and I wanted to straighten my crew up. I mean, we all want to do that when we're in that life, you know. And being with Philly gave me a lot of independence. That's why I made that move. But no, I had everything before I even went down there.
Well, being around all these guys, both on the Boston side and on the Philly side, you're, you know, attracted the attention of the feds. And at one point, they started to really look into the whole crew and started, you know, putting in federal agents to buy drugs and start videotaping things and everything else like that. Did you know the feds were onto you, or did you have no idea?
They were onto me before the 99 happened. They were onto me because they showed me videos. I was at a funeral of a friend's in Charlestown, one of the Irish guys, and they had tapes of me there. You know, and then after the 99 happened, I heard they flew a lot of agents in just to watch our family to see what we were doing. So I was hot. You know, after 95, 96, I was hot up there anyway. Actually, going down to Philly, I used to drive down most of the time. And every time I got to the hotel, when I go back outside, there'd be a plainclothes Boston state trooper car that used to follow me down. They used to leave the hat in the back so I could see it when I walked past it. So it was pretty open surveillance. And the FBI told me too, they actually told me they were in the elevators with me at the hotel in Philly going up and down. I never knew who they were or recognized them, you know. But I had a lot of surveillance on me.
Well, on June 28th, 1999, 13 people get indicted for conspiracy to acquire and distribute cocaine.
Right.
And you're a part of that.
I'm part of that.
Do you remember the day you got busted?
Oh, yeah, I remember that day. That was all right. Yeah, I remember that day. Well, at that point, when I got arrested, you know, I was going back to church, you know, and a funny story, you know, going back to church. And I was having a hard time doing what I was doing. I had a religious experience, you want to call it, not religious, spiritual experience. And I think it was, March 28th of 1998, I accepted Jesus back in my life. So I'm trying to go to church, I'm trying to run my crew on the street, and then boom, this happens on June 28th, 99. And they came to my house, nice, cuffed me up, put me in the car, you know, and I said, well, this will be a vacation. I was kind of looking forward to it, to be honest with you. You know, but while I was in there, I got some bad news, because at that pinch, I was only facing 10 to 12 years. And, you know, that's another part of the life. You know, you're going to do sometime, you know, so that really wasn't a bad pinch. But while I was in there, I found out that I was getting re-indicted on a murder one charge. And several guys had flipped on me, and they had me cold on it. And this came right from an AUSA that had retired from that office. Was working in my lawyer's office. So it was first-hand information. And he said, Bobby, they get you cold. He said that You're not going to get out of here. I can get you this 10 to 12, but you're going to be getting life. Everybody flipped on you. On this one particular murder. Now, there was a few, but there was only one particular, So, at that point, I had to decide to, lick my wounds or just go fight. What was I going to do? So now all my friends in Boston were lining up against me. So I didn't want to be a pincushion anymore. So I decided to talk to the feds at that point.
Well, the murder you're talking about, that was the 1997 murder of Anthony DiPrizio?
I think it was that murder. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Well, did you admit to that murder as part of your
eventually
deal?
I did. What happened, as negotiations were going on with the feds, things started breaking down. We never fully finished my agreement with them. Because when I started talking with them, I really didn't want to be an informant. I couldn't do it, So I tried to recant them, and eventually I went to 5 status hearings, and they ripped my agreement up. And I went to trial, I think it was 2002, on the cocaine charges, and I got 20 years on that.
Well, with the murder, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is you admitted to the murder of Anthony DiPrizio, but did you get charged for that murder or no?
Well, in the superseding indictment, but no, I never got charged for it. When you go in a proffer and you sign papers with these people, they can't come back at you with the information that you gave them. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Okay? So that murder got out. Yes, it did. And they talked about that murder in the paper. But everything else I told them is under seal. They couldn't use it.
So like a proffer agreement in a way? Where you tell them, everything you know, but they can't use it against you to indict you?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. But here you are facing this drug charge, and the way that the prosecution said that the case is so strong, it's overwhelming.
Which case is this now?
This is the drug case, and I guess they actually had videotapes of you buying.
Oh yeah, no, they had me cold, but it was still entrapment. It was still. I went to trial twice on this. I lost twice, but I went to trial twice. I won an appeal. I went back in 2007. And both times we went in for entrapment. Now, if you read, when Joey went to trial, his jury found entrapment on him. But in Boston, they found me guilty before I even started the trial. The jury I was in so many articles. They knew what I did, the popularity. They didn't care how the government got me in Boston. They just wanted to wrap me up,
Well, you're facing these drug charges, but you're also cooperating at the same time?
When you ask the question, in 99, I got picked up on drug charges with Joey Molino. There were 13 of us got indicted. They split the indictments up. They called it the Molino faction in Philadelphia and the Luisi faction in Massachusetts. And they split the indictment up. So Boston picked mine up and Philly picked up theirs. While I'm in there trying to make a deal, 10 to 12 to, just take a plea and go do my time. Someone came to me, a friend of mine, that he was arrested on something else. He was in there in Plymouth with me. And he said, Bobby, I heard some murder indictments are coming down. Did you talk to your lawyer? So I called Jack to come down, and he came down to the prison, and I told him what I heard. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, Jack comes back with Marty Bedreau. Marty Bedreau is an ex-USA from the Boston office. He just left there and went into practice, luckily, with my attorney, Jack McGlone. Marty tells me, he said, Bobby, because the question with the murders, he says, yes, there are murder indictments coming down. And he said, listen, they got you cold. All your friends are flipping on you. He never told me which murder, it was. But he said, all your friends are flipping on you, and you're not going to get out. They're boasting about it up in the Fed's office that they got you. So he says, listen, I can get you the 10 to 12 now, but he said, when this grand jury is over, you're going up to the next grand jury with this murder, and you're going to get re-indicted and superseded on murder 1. And he said, I can't get you out of that, Bobby. You know how the feds make their cases, they're 94, 96% rate of, winning because they got you all set up at the time, So I had to make a decision then what I wanted to do. He suggested that I talk to them and cut this off now and see if I could get a better deal for myself. And it took me 2-3 weeks before I really decided to do that because it was against my grain. We just set all this up in Boston. I had my own type of family up there, Luisi's, and, I couldn't see myself doing it. But then again, I can't see myself doing life and all these other guys are going to go home, I was like a pincushion. Every time they picked a guy up there, they let him out to come and get me. I'll give him a deal. So I stopped all that. I went in and I talked to them. During the negotiations with the feds, I told them a lot of things, Vlad. I'm not going to lie. I said a lot of things I wish I didn't. But as the negotiations were going on, Sammy the Bull gets picked up in that thing in Arizona. So they come to a meeting, says, see what Sammy did, we're going to have to give you more time. I told them about another murder, they came back, well, we're going to have to give you more time. So the original deal I made with them, they were skating from. So you know what? I decided to flip on them like I do with everything else. And they did a few things I didn't like, and I attacked them a little. And I know it sounds insane, but I did go after the government, and the way I did it was pen and paper. And negotiations broke down, and I ended up going to 5 status hearings, and they ripped my agreement up, and all they could do to me, because the judge said, because I signed those proffers, was take me on my underlying indictment, which was the cocaine. And that was a 20-year sentence.
So you end up getting 20 years for drugs?
Yeah. 235 months. I lost the first trial.
How old were you at the time?
I was 38 when I got picked up in 99. Yeah.
So essentially they're saying you're going to be in prison for half your life.
Yeah.
Half the life you've already lived.
Yeah, just about, yeah.
How do you get your head around that?
Well, it was a little tough. I mean, I did some little bits, like a week here and there, never a long term. But, I was already in there when this was going on. I was getting settled in. And it was either rat on my friends or do 20 years. And I'd rather do the 20 years, to be honest with you. I just, there's some things in life you can't do. I just couldn't do that. When I first got pinched, they offered me to go back out on the street if I wore a wire. I couldn't do that. Could never do that. Tape my friends. I could never do anything like that. So now I got this 235 months I got to serve. In the meantime, I'm waiting for my paperwork to come back so I could file my appeal. And we didn't get my appeal until, I think, 2006. At that time, they changed the guidelines with the leadership roles and everything. So now I win the appeal, was the first one in Massachusetts to overturn a drug case, go back to trial, lose again. It wasn't even a contest, lost again. But this time, the judge had to take off 47 months for the leadership role. So when he did that, I ended up with 15-8. And I got home in 2013.
Well, you end up doing almost 14 years.
Yes, 13-9, yeah. Yeah.
Now, being in prison, and even though you're doing that time, you did cooperate.
I cooperated in the beginning.
Right,
Yes.
in the beginning. So, as you're in prison, does the rest of prison yard know that you cooperated?
No, they put me in WITSEC units. They had to. Because, listen, this went from Boston to New York to Philadelphia, and everybody knew what I did, so they couldn't take a chance to put me out in population. And that was another way I kind of screwed myself, that I was upset about. But the units were good, I did a lot while I was in prison. I got a degree in theology, I wrote a book. I taught GED class. Also started courses for the guys that were going home. I did that, and I always worked in prison. Head cook, head orderly, whatever.
Right, and the whole time you're basically in protective custody.
Yeah, yep.
Got it.
You know.
Now, as this is happening, as you're in prison, you're in protective custody, but are you hearing any words that there is, a hit on you, money on your head, or anything else like that?
Yeah, I heard a few things came back to me. I heard a few things, yeah.
Okay, but nothing ever happened in prison?
To me, no.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I fought in prison like everybody else, I had my share of beefs in there, but no, not that severe.
So in 2013, you get out.
Yeah.
Now, was that part of a deal with you testifying against some Skinny Joey or no?
No, I served my time. I did my 15-8, and I got my good time. And that's how I got out at 13. I got my good time back. Before I won my appeal, I did a lot of fighting. I was moved around a lot. And but when I won the appeal, I got all my good time back. So that helped me. So now from 99, taking off, you do 85% of your time, I get out in March of 13. Before I get out, they come to me over the Gardner Museum, asking for my help on that case. And I told them what I knew. And then they came, at that time there was Enrico Ponzo, he grew up in the neighborhood, and he was on the run too, when Whitey Bulger was on the run. Had nothing to do with each other, but he was out there, I think 13 years. And they caught Rico. And the feds came and told me they wanted to know where I was going because I was getting subpoenaed to that trial. And I told them, I said, I never committed a crime with Rico. There's nothing I could say about him. They said, well, we just wanted to go up there. We're going to ask you about, you were the boss up there at the time, and we're just going to ask you about the structure. So I had to make a decision what I was going to do because I'd been called to grand juries before and pleaded the fifth. But I just did 14 years. I wasn't going to go plead the fifth for this kid. So I went up there with 64 other people, got called on that case, and I believe 2 other wise guys from the Patriarca family were called there, and everybody talked. And that's it, but I made no deal to get out of prison. I did all my time.
Got it. Well, because at one point, there was a whole sweep that happened with the Philly mob, where Skinny Joe Merlino gets arrested along with like 46 people.
Yeah, that's the New York case. Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah, got nothing to do with me. Yeah.
So at that point, you had nothing to do with these guys at all?
Nothing. Nope.
Well, and I think Skinny Joey got like $5 million bail, and they had, recorded conversations on him and everything else like that. What ultimately happened with that whole case?
Well, Joey went and did his time, and he got out. He just got out. He's still on supervised release, from what I understand. He's living in Florida right now, and they say he's still the boss of the family. And there's a street boss and underboss up at Philly running everything. And there's still a crew in Boston. The remnants from my old crew and whoever else they made up there, I don't know. I shut this off in 1999, to be honest with you. I really don't pay attention to what's going on the street right now. I hear things, I just leave it at that, but whatever they're doing now is none of my business. I don't even want to know, to be honest with you.
Well, you get out of prison in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, do they put you into the witness protection program?
Yes. They did. They put me in Tennessee. I went right to Memphis. I was there for 5 years. I was in the witness protection, I think, for like 2 years, 2.5 years. And as soon as I was all done with that, I signed out and started, got my name back, Robert Luisi. And I think it was 17, I went to Florida, 2017. And then I came back to Boston in 2018.
Well, explain to me what witness protection is. Like, tell me the steps that, the feds kind of go through to create a whole new identity and to protect you from people who might want to kill you.
Well, you go into the marshal service. The marshals take care of all that. Once you're going in there, you're out of the feds' hands. If they need you, they got to go through the marshals. And what they do is you get a new social security number, passport, new name, the whole deal. And with me, they stuck me in Tennessee where there were no Italians, really. Nobody liked me around. They stuck me down there. And I liked it in the beginning. I met a woman down there. I got married under my alias, Alonzo Esposito. And that didn't last too long, unfortunately. You know, I was fresh out of prison. I think I just rushed into a relationship too fast. But I married a beautiful woman down there. And I was in Tennessee, but dying to go back to Boston and see my family, to be with my children.
So the whole time when you're under witness protection, you can't see your family at all?
No, that would have to be planned. If they would even do that, to call them, you got to go through Washington. You just can't call them on the phone. Everything's protected. You know, if you violate that, you get in trouble. You know, so I was very careful of not breaking the rules down there. You know, I might have cheated once or twice with some phone calls, but pretty much I did what they said to do. You know, I wanted a new chance at life. That's why I went down there. I really thought I could do it. I didn't want to go back home to Boston at the time because I didn't know what I was going to turn into if I came back home or what was going to happen.
Well, what did you leave behind? Like wife, kids? Break it down for me.
3 children at the time, my wife. They didn't go into the program. When I did what I did, they moved to Florida. My wife bought a condo, a home down in Sunrise. And my mother bought a home in Tamarack, and they were living down there. But while I was in there, you know, I had a 20-year sentence. My wife really wanted to be back home with her family, so they lasted a few years, and they went back to Boston.
I mean, was there any danger that the mob might go after your family for cooperating?
I never believed that, no. I never believed that. You know, it's about our families. We're not, you know, the Sicilian Mafia is different from here, you know. Vendettas and everything else, that's really not going to happen. There were guys in the Bonanno family that I was in prison with. They ratted, they were informants, and their kids were still on the street working with everybody. So all that other, you know, unless my son was involved, it might have been a problem for them. Maybe they would have went after him, you know. But my son had nothing to do with that. 13 years old at the time. They're not going to bother nobody.
Well, you cooperated, but you don't consider yourself a rat.
I never testified against anybody. I didn't. Let someone come and say I put them in prison. I did the wrong thing, Vlad. I'm not going to say that I didn't. I should have never did that. And maybe you could call me a rat, I don't know. But did I rat? No. Did I put one of my friends in prison? No. I didn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Well, at one point, you actually left the witness protection program.
Yes, I did, yeah.
How many years in did you leave?
I think it was 2 years. I think maybe a little over 24 months, and then I signed out.
Was there something that happened that made you feel like, okay, I'm going to get out of this program now?
No, not really. You know, I got a great job. As soon as I got out of prison, I have a background we talked about earlier in construction. I got a job right away when I got out, when I hit Tennessee. I got a supervisor manager job. From there, I worked for Sandusky Cabinets. They were out of Chicago. They had a big plant in Tennessee. I went there, I was a quality control manager for them. You know, I had all my insurances, I had everything I need. I had beautiful cars, and we had a house, and I just didn't feel I needed the marshals anymore, you know?
Well, you said you actually prayed for your old Philadelphia mob friends, especially Marlino, in his time of trouble, and you hope that he finds a way out.
Yeah, I do. For all of them, to be honest with you. You know, I really do. I mean, the life today, it's not like when I grew up with the wise guys in the late 70s and the 80s. That was the time, you know? You know, Joey's father was an underboss in the family years ago before he went to prison. Joey's the same thing, George. They all grew up in this life, all around these guys. You know, but it's not what it used to be. It's not like that anymore. It's sad. They just had a meeting in Philly in 2015. They made a few guys, and one of them was wired. I mean, where are we going with this now? You know? And then again, they got my friends on tape. I know, I call them my friends. I don't know what they call me, Vlad, but I don't care. If there's one thing I learned, I have a degree in theology, and I also have a book up on Amazon, God's Plans Revealed. And I believe it's not what they think about you, it's what you think about them. I don't have hate or malice in my heart for anybody.
Well, you said, I know they'd like to kill me, but I have love in my heart for them.
Yeah.
I had an awakening. They have to come to a point where they say, I had enough of this.
Yeah. That's something you got to do on your own. No one could ask you, force you to do that. When that thing happened to me in 98, I want to say I denounced God, but it was hard for me to believe with the things that we were doing. But when I seen what I saw, I knew there was a devil, and I knew there was Jesus Christ. And that changed my life. I went from that night being a die-hard gangster to want to see Christ, to be honest with you. Because I wanted to know what happened to me, why this thing happened to me. And I got my answers when I searched.
Well, and then at one point you became a pastor.
I was a pastor. What happened when I married my wife down there, I was going to different churches, and she lived next door to a bishop, had a black church. Great guy, Bishop Coleman. He read my book. So after he read the book, he wanted me to come and teach in his church. And so I went in there. I was an assistant pastor for a short time in Bishop Coleman's church.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like Michael Franzese, who's been a regular on my show, who kind of wins that same type of field.
Yeah. Mike's a great guy. We did, Mike and I did Comedy Central in 2017. There was me, Frank DiMatteo. You had him on the show too, Frank.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Us three were there with the fake Donald Trump. Oh, it was a great show. Great show. Yeah, Mike's a good guy. He's doing great too. God bless him.
He is.
Yeah, he really is. He really is.
Well, one of the things you said is, I did some terrible things.
I did bad things.
What do you think is the most terrible thing that you did?
Wow, what kind of question is that? Just about everything we did was terrible. I mean, you take people's lives, that's not a good thing. That's a terrible thing, Selling drugs, that's could never do that again. I don't like to say it on the show, but I lost my Danielle, my oldest, December 18th of 2019. She passed away. It's all these drugs on the street. I feel more bad about the drugs than I do about the actual murders, to be honest with you. People ask me all the time about that. How do you feel, what you did? It was me or them, or my friends, or my family. When we're in that life, we feel we're more, it's like being in the Marines. You get an order to go, you go. I mean, that's it. We're not civilians anymore once we take that oath and look Cosa Nostra. So a lot of that terrible things and hurting people and things I did, I think the worst thing we did was sell drugs. I have to be honest with you.
So your own daughter died from a drug overdose?
Yes, she did.
Wow.
Yeah, my Danielle.
How old was she at the time?
36.
36. Well, that's tough.
Beautiful
that's
girl,
tough.
too. Sad.
I mean, how do you get your head around that you lose your daughter from drugs, but then you also have to think that some of the drugs that you pushed probably did that to other fathers and mothers, losing their kids?
That's what I'm talking about, Vlad, when I say I feel terrible.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a show on YouTube right now, the Bobby Luisi Show. And we have some counselors coming on there now, local people that are helping people right now. And we're hoping within the next month we'll start producing those shows on my show. And my main goal now was just to help people in the community in Boston and, try to get some of these people help. And Paul Tanzo, that does the show with me, he was very influential with all that, with the safe houses and the judges and getting people into, getting people help, getting them into the safe houses. So we're going to start getting back on that program again and hopefully start helping people.
Well, when you talk about the mafia, the Italian mafia, the mob, however you want to say it, it's gotten marketed so well through spectacular movies like The Godfather and Goodfellas and Casino and all these films that are so well made. And these are supposed to be secret organizations, but they get plastered all over the big screen like this, and everyone wants to associate themselves with it. But ultimately, I've interviewed so many of these mafia guys like yourself, and the level of destruction that happens from just being affiliated with this is always massive. There's always these busts that happen where 20, 30, 50 people get indicted. People are given double, triple life, plus 5 years, witness protection. For example, like, you talk about losing your daughter, to drugs. Michael Franzese has a similar story as well. Mm-hmm. I believe he lost his sister.
Yes, he did.
His own brother was a drug addict, ended up testifying, putting his own dad in prison. Mm-hmm. Like, the level of backstabbing and snitching and death and murder and everything else like that is always seems to just be so much more than whatever the good times are at the height of their careers. Why do you think so many people still continue to do it, and how people still get into it knowing that's what's going to happen ultimately?
Well, I got to say this. In my neighborhoods, I don't see too much of that, but there are guys that are still bucking for those positions. They're out there, because, like, again, in my generation, I grew up with it. I grew up with wise guys. It was there on my face every day. Young kids coming up now have to be insane to even think about getting involved with this. There's kids out there now, they're selling drugs on their own to make a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a week. What do they need the mob for? You know what I'm saying? But then there's these guys, they want to be involved. They idolize it. They want to be in that life. They want to see what it feels like to be in that life. A lot of this life is action. With the gambling, with the women, even with the murders and everything else that goes on. Even ducking the feds, it's action. It's a form of action. Like going to the horse track and betting on that horse and praying that horse wins and yelling and screaming. You understand? People like action, and there's action in this life, and they want to get that feeling. What's it like to jump out of the plane with a parachute? But unfortunately, the parachutes aren't opening no more, Vlad. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the old days. Now they're crashing. But they don't see it. They just don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost did life in prison over rats and informants. Am I going to come back out on the street after doing 14 years and put myself in that same position again? You have to be insane. It's insanity. No? But some of these guys do. They love that life. I just can't see it. And I know I'm not any smarter than them, but I just can't see it.
Well, Bobby Luisi, I appreciate you sharing your story. And you have your own podcast as well.
Yeah, it's the Bobby Luisi Show. We're trying to get on there like once a week. And we're doing a lot of different shows. And we're getting some followers. We're doing pretty good. And we're going to keep going on with these podcasts, Vlad. And like I said, see if we can help some people. Right now, we're doing a lot of mob stuff because all my friends are ex-gangsters, so that's pretty obvious in me, But we're going to be venturing into different areas, different genres, and see what we could put together on the show.
Well, that's what it is, Bobby Luisi. Appreciate you sharing your story. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me on. God bless.
My pleasure. Until next time.
All right, brother.
Peace.